this is an interesting question. It's saying, normally all sensory pathways project to the thalamus and then to corresponding cortical areas, except for one. Which of the following pathways carries impulses directly to the cortex without passing through the thalamus first? So let's break down this question. It's kind of saying the same thing in two different ways here. So we could break off this and here. So we see in the first part, it's saying about all sensory pathways projecting to the thalamus and then to cortical areas. And then it's saying in the last part, which is the one that does not. So what this question is saying is that usually you go from the thalamus and then to the cortical areas to signal to the body different sensory sensations. So we could be looking at either sight, smell, taste, hearing. This is what we're thinking of when we're thinking of different senses. But of the ones listed, there will be one that is an exception to this rule. And that exception means that we are going to be eliminating this thalamus part and just going to the cortical areas. And now as a review, let's just bring up our diagram here. And as you could see, we are looking at the thalamus. So just to have a visual here, we see thalamus right there. And we know that the thalamus is pointing to this area. So even though for this question we don't actually need a diagram, it might be helpful just to visualize what we're looking at. So this is the thalamus, and we're going to find which pathway does not go through the thalamus, because there's one here which does not. So most of our senses, like we were describing, sight, hearing, taste, touch, these signals, they go through the thalamus before going to the areas that process them. So it kind of just is to get the signal through the brain so that we can recognize what these things are. So what are you tasting? What are you hearing? What are you looking at? To recognize what these things mean to us. So the thalamus is kind of like a relay station. So it helps to sort through the information and make sure that we're interpreting them correctly. So you can know, okay, I'm about to look at something or feel something hot that could be dangerous, signal the brain to be cautious in those sort of situations. And maybe you see something dangerous, hear something dangerous, so to help as protective mechanisms. But for some reason, which we will discuss that reason, smell works differently because it only goes straight to the parts of the brain that it's needed for by bypassing the thalamus, because it's more related to the limbic system, which has to do mostly with memory and feeling. So if you think about smell, it actually is directly related to memory and emotion, which is why you might think that you have strong emotional response to certain smells. So maybe if there's the smell of paint that you always associate with your kindergarten classroom, maybe you feel a little nostalgic when you smell paint. So that's kind of the idea of the smell and the emotion going together. And it also has a primitive meaning to it. So smell is a basic survival mechanism that was using back in very simple civilization. If you smelled something dangerous, that would kind of alert the body to be cautious. Also, because smell is a different pathway and not going directly through the thalamus, an interesting fact about that is that when you see symptoms related to sensations after a stroke incident, so maybe someone has issues with their hearing or with their vision, usually the sense of smell would be spared from those damages because it's going through a different pathway. And this would be the case when there is isolated bilateral damage to the thalamus, since the thalamus would be spared with the sense of smell. And this could be the case during a stroke or some sort of traumatic brain injury where there's bilateral damage to the thalamus. So when we're looking for which pathway is the exception, which does not go through the thalamus, it would be the one related to smell. And of these four, which is the one that is related to smell? So if you remember your cranial nerve number 1, your olfactory pathway is related to the sense of smell. And some students find it helpful to remember the olfactory pathway. Think of an old factory, maybe an old chocolate factory or an old bakery type factory. You would have the sense of smell related to that, thinking of the smell of the cookies being baked. So that could be an easy way to help you remember. Olfactory is related to the sense of smell, and therefore that would be the answer to this question.